Hi and welcome. I'm your host, Phil Klein, and I'm here today with Rick Steves, the travel author and travel business owner. And I'm here to ask you about your role as a business leader. Rick Steves, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Phil. Nice to be with you.
So can you share a little bit about what ethical business means to you and how you're running your business?
I love running my business. I just love being an entrepreneur. I think it's because I love the mission of our company, and that is to teach people how to travel. I've only had two jobs in my whole life, and they're both my hobbies. I used to be a piano teacher, and I had quite a good business going as a piano teacher. I had a studio with a couple of teachers, and I was happy to do that for the rest of my life. And then I decided, no, I like travel more, so I'm going to teach travel. I've been doing this since I was a kid. It's like 40 years now. I wrote my first book 40 years ago. And preface any of my ideas about running a business with the fact that I happen to be in a lucky situation where I'm profitable every year. So I can take the high road because I've got enough money to take the high road. So I've got to remember that. And also I'm privately held. So I don't need to deal with a board of directors, and I don't need stockholders to keep happy. I am the stockholder. I think there's something very serious in the United States, and that's in the business community. In my understanding, in the last generation, we've gone to a situation where publicly held corporations are legally obligated to profit maximize in the short term. And that changes the whole game. I'm not legally obligated to profit maximize in the short term because I don't have to deal with stockholders. If I had stockholders, I couldn't run my business the way I run my business right now. I do things not based on how much money can I make. I measure profit on how many trips can I impact. And that makes me more profitable, not in the short term, but in the long term. And that makes my work both more fun and the profitability of my company more sustainable. And it lets me take the ethical high road.
Wow, so you really use the outcome of your work as it impacts your customers to measure your success as a business?
Yes. And my publicity stunt, my advertising is just spreading around information for free. So my TV show, I spend millions of dollars making my TV show. I don't charge for it. If I did, stations would not run it as much as they do. Every station in the country runs my PBS show. I got 400 stations in public radio run my radio show. It's free. I pay to produce it and I give it to the system. I have to be very careful that it doesn't have, self-promotional kind of stuff in it. So I'm really strict about that. But it's my love of travel, and that's what powers my business. You got 10 people together, I'll give them a travel talk. I just love to talk about travel. And that enthusiasm comes back to me in people that think, well, he knows his stuff and he's committed to it and he must be good. Also, I've been really careful not to, if I was profit driven, I would franchise this thing. I'd be having guidebooks to Costa Rica. We'd be doing river cruises. I don't believe in river cruises. We're never going to do river cruises. We can make a lot of money doing river cruises, but we don't. Costa Rica, it's not my thing. I've been there. It's a great place to travel, but don't ask me to be your tour guide to Costa Rica. I love Europe. It's my roots. I know Europe. I've got friends in Europe. It's a good market. And I'm having fun running my business for Europe. So I get to kind of create my own playing field as a businessman. And again, I'm thankful that it happens to be profitable. And it's just a lot of fun. I love being an entrepreneur, and I love employing people when we have a good mission.
Can you talk a little bit about how your policy of continuing support your employees? What is that policy, and how are they staying engaged during these times when they can't travel as easily?
Well, yeah, the whole pandemic thing is not good for anybody in the tourist industry, that's for sure. We had our best year ever before COVID hit. We were a $100 million company with 100 employees. We took 30,000 people around Europe on 1,200 different tours. My publisher was so excited about how good our guidebooks were doing. He had a list of the top 30 American published guidebooks to Europe, and 25 of them had Rick Steves on the cover. This was great. And we were just euphoric. And then all of a sudden, bam, we're just hit by this tsunami. Now I've got zero revenue and 100 people on my payroll. This is tough times. I'm investing in my company because I know we're going to get through this pandemic and I'm going to have my team intact. But it's expensive. Ethically, I've made money off of my staff for 30 years. Right now, my staff's making money off of me. It's okay. You play the cards you're dealt. That's ethical. It's also, it's just the right thing to do. But it's also good business because I want my team intact when the sun rises on international travel again. And we're going to be there. Now, in the interim, I'm just thinking like an entrepreneur. I'm paying my staff. We've trimmed the sales. We're working at about 4 days a week instead of 5 days a week. We've still got our healthcare. We're encouraging people to take extended leaves and this kind of thing. But we've basically got 100 people on our payroll with almost no revenue. And I'm paying my staff, even if there's not enough work to keep them busy. But I'd love for them to have this joy of actually contributing. And I've got the challenge of paying for them regardless. So I'm very aware when it's probably good that my table, this is my workstation at home, and I've got this beautiful windows and I'm on a little bluff looking out over my community. It's a constant reminder that we're in this together. I'm in a community. There's darkness, there's fear, there's rent payments, there's kids, there's school at home, there's what's the future hold for us? There are very important organizations in our community whose volunteer staffs are nervous to go out because it's normally retired people that go do the volunteering and they're more susceptible to this virus. I thought, I've got capable, able-bodied people who I'm paying and we don't have enough work to keep them busy. Let's create the Rick Steves Volunteer Corps. It's a great thing. So now, about 20% of our workforce is actually on my payroll doing volunteer work for the food bank and for the seniors and for the city that has to pull the invasive weeds out of the parks and for the Meals on Wheels. And it's just a joyful thing. And it makes it more fun for me to make this payroll, knowing that we're contributing and knowing that we're keeping our staff together. Now, for me, that's an entrepreneurial solution. And I do it with a little bit of high profile because I want to inspire other entrepreneurs to think out of the box a little bit too, because much more fundamental than my vacation to Europe or your vacation to Europe or my profit during these difficult times is how do we hold our community together? And we're all in this together. And if we don't recognize this, and if we're as selfish as the business environment we've almost obligates us to be with this conventional short-term profit maximization over everything else, we're going to be the victims of our own short-sightedness and greed. But if we can think a little more expansively, a little more generously, a little more confidently in the future, a little more ethically, we'll all be more profitable in the long term. And I think that's just smart business.
I'm curious if you've shared this with other business leaders, or if you had an opportunity, what would you say to other business leaders kind of to encourage them beyond what they see as, maybe the limits of their ability to do some of the things you've been suggesting?
Yeah, I'm careful not to be too annoying, although it is fun to afflict the comfortable as we try to comfort the afflicted. But I always preface it by, okay, yeah, I'm lucky. I've got a business that's profitable. I'm a sole proprietorship, so I've got the ability to do things a little more unilaterally and turn on a dime than a conventional corporation. But I do think this whole notion that if you're just interested in the quarterly profit statement, you're bringing yourself down in the long term. We need to be sustainable. We need to invest in people. We need to invest in a healthy, well-educated workforce. I mean, it sounds a little harsh, but you can just think of human beings. You can think of your neighbors as human capital. I mean, I just did a TV show about the fundamentals of hunger in Ethiopia and Guatemala, and I called 100 million people in Ethiopia human capital. And the government is investing in their human capital because they want to be the world's next sweatshop. That's kind of harsh terms, but China's been there and now they've evolved beyond it. And Ethiopia is doing the same thing. You can look at it in those harsh economic terms and make some sense. We need to invest in our community in a long-term way, not a short-term way. We need to have an environment in a long-term way, not a short-term way. Your whole judgment is clouded if it's all quarterly profit statement. And I'm in this for the long haul. And I would think any enlightened business leader would be also. We've got to get beyond the short-term profit statement mentality. And that takes courage, and that takes leadership, and that takes honesty. And I'd like to contribute to that, as not as a travel guru, but as a local business leader. I'm just part of the local business. And I do things in a way that I try to inspire other people to, be nudged by the way I like to run my business. And I'm having fun doing it. I'm having fun doing it. And it actually comes back in my favor from a business point of view. So I've done many things over the years that people would say, is that really wise for you to be outspoken about drug policy reform, for you to, do this or that? And I think, well, it's honest. And I can just blame my European friends for this kind of sensibility. And it actually works well in the long term. So it's fun. And it makes going to work in the morning for me much more gratifying.
And when it comes to the ethics of intercultural connections, you also have a unique way of reaching across and bridging between cultures. For other businesses or people in other workplaces that need to navigate that, what recommendations would you have for navigating communication or dealing with people from different cultures?
I think one thing is we have to remember we have hard beliefs, preconceptions, norms. And it's humbling to go to a country that just rearranges all your cultural furniture. I love that. A lot of people are afraid of that. It's stressful. No, don't tell me that expensive cheese is a good value. For me, when I was growing up, cheese was orange in the shape of the bread. Here, cheese sandwich. I'm so thankful I had people that took me under their wing and took me over into the fancy goat cheese section in that festival of mold called a cheese shop in Paris, and let me know that stinky expensive cheese is a good investment. Now, that's just a silly little thing, but I took home with me a passion for beautiful cheese. Now, you can do that in other things. You can do that, a passion in healthcare, a passion in education, a passion in women's rights, a passion celebrating diversity, a passion for taking care of the environment. These are all, values you get when you travel. You can expose people to these ideas that there's more than one right way to do it. Let's compare notes. That's one thing I really love. One of my favorite things as a tour guide was to sit in the town hall in Oslo, surrounded by all these murals. It was like the town hall in Oslo is like a church, and Oslo is the least church-going corner of Europe, but their religion is civics, good citizenship, neighbors looking out for each other, paying high taxes with high expectations so that all in their community can be cared for. It's a fascinating thing. And to sit down with your Americans at a table surrounded by all of these murals that don't celebrate Bible stories, but celebrate heroic Norwegians who contribute mightily to their community. Wow. And then to ask my Norwegian friend there, why do you guys do this? How does that work? What about this? And to learn from them. It's a beautiful thing. And that's humbling. And then you go home and you realize, hey, we could look at it this way. There's a lot of challenges we have in our society. I mean, you could think of just many of them, fossil fuels, opioid addiction, road safety. I mean, education challenges, that we could learn from each other. I just love this idea that we can compare notes, and we could do that in our communities just like we do when we travel.
And does that extend all the way to shifting your own ethics? How have your ethics changed over the years, either as a business person or as a traveler? Have they changed?
Well, you have to balance what is right and what is self-serving, I guess. And a lot of people, it's a struggle. I'm lucky because for me, what is right is also what is self-serving. So I don't want to come off as some saintly person. Everything that I do, people go, Rick, thank you so much for what you did here or there. I just did it because I'm in a position where I can afford not to be conventional, but I can just do what I think is ethical and what I think is right. There's a candor for that in our community. If especially somebody who's a business leader in their community can take a very thoughtful, respectful stance about something, and then walk the talk, it inspires people. We need that kind of leadership. We need that kind of leadership outside of the church and outside of the government. We need leadership in our business communities. And I enjoy that. I jump at every opportunity to go to a Rotary luncheon and give a talk, because I can share what I think is important about how I like to run my business as part of my community. You know, how you know, uh, how we have a responsibility in our community. A beautiful community like the community I live in doesn't just happen. There's a lot of dedicated people that go to a lot of meetings I could never sit through. And the least I can do is support that in my business, in the way I run my business. So it makes being a workaholic like me a lot more fun. And it also makes my business more profitable in the long run, which I think works really well.
Wow, that's all really, really great. Can you tell me what you would like to leave us with in terms of these sets of questions that you've been sharing about?
You know, we've been talking about ethics and everything, like, being a good businessman. Well, and there's also good business that just means, how's your bottom line doing? And I can tell you from 30 years of experience that I'm learning something. I'm learning. They didn't really teach me it in business school. Although my favorite class in business school was called BGS, Business, Government, and Society, and it really was business ethics. I didn't know that that would be so important to me 40 years later, now as a person who runs a fun travel business employing 100 people. But I've learned over 4 decades that good business is good business. And I've also learned that if you're mission driven, if you put your mission first over profit, you'll actually be more profitable. So why not? It works. And we're mission driven. We measure our profit in how many trips to Europe do we impact in a positive way. And it just happens to be more profitable. That makes it lots of fun to run a travel company.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Rick, for exploring that with us, for sharing your insights and the successes and experiences that you've been having as a business owner. You are a model in many, many ways. So really appreciate your time and your sharing. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Bill. And I love an interview where I actually learn a little bit about myself by having somebody, ask me questions about why do I do what I do. Happy travels.
Thank you. And to you.